Hello and welcome to the Switch4Good podcast. I'm Alexandra Paul and I'm here with my co-host Dotsie Bausch.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Dotsie. So listen, this episode is about cheese. And
it is.
You know a lot about cheese. So
our guest knows a lot more.
Yeah, that's true. So I'd like you to talk a little bit to our audience about cheese.
Yes, I'm gonna start us out here with some facts.
Okay.
All right, for the fact lovers out there, which is you. I'm always trying to please you and make you happy.
You.
So I want to kind of set up the problem here, in specifically to the deleterious effects of dairy. Now we know cheese is the most concentrated form of cow's milk. So, but under cow's milk, right? We have yogurt and obviously milk, and we have cottage cheese, and we have butter, and we have cheese.
We have ice cream. Don't forget.
And we have ice cream. I did forget ice cream. So our guest is, in my opinion, and yours too, I think, the solution to this problem. So I'm going to just give some scientific facts based on research, all of which you can find under switch4good.org and clicking on Why Ditch Dairy to understand. I'm going to go through 4 reasons, and then I'm going to introduce our guest and we're going to dive in because the solution is pretty awesome. All right. So first off, I'm going to start with cardiovascular health and inflammation. Years of research has told us that consuming foods high in saturated fats like dairy products can be detrimental to our cardiovascular health. Most recently, a 2018 study published in Laboratory Investigation not only found changes in size and shape of red blood cells just 1 hour after consuming a high-fat milkshake, but also changed in our immune cell function, setting the stage for inflammation, plaque formation, and ultimately heart disease, which, as we know, is our number one killer here in the United States. In regards to ovarian cancer, research links cow's milk, dairy, to increased risk of ovarian cancer in a study examining the incidence rates of ovarian cancer in 40 countries across 5 continents. Researchers found that they were most closely correlated with cow's milk intake. The research suggests that women who drank just 1 or more glasses of whole cow's milk per day, and remember, the dietary guidelines tells us to drink 3 per day, but the women who drank just 1 or more glasses of cow's milk per day were 3 times at a greater risk for ovarian cancer. Next, asthma. This one is, very confusing for people, I think, because they don't necessarily know how to connect it. So there are 2 intolerances to dairy. One is a lactose intolerance, right? And the other one is a full-blown dairy allergy, which is, has all sorts of side effects.
Which is much more rare, but the intolerance
correct.
Is, 65%
65% of the world's population, correct, right? And much higher
has
in
intolerance
people
to dairy.
Of color. Yeah. So cow's milk and other dairy products, including cheese, have been shown to increase mucus production in the body, which is a hallmark symptom of asthma. Now, researchers hypothesize that increased intestinal permeability, which has been associated with strenuous exercise, so for athletes, allows the casein protein to leak through the gut and therefore stimulate excess mucus production. And lastly, bone density. Right? What all women are, Caucasian women, because we know from Dr. Milton Mills that African-American women do not get osteoporosis. So all of us Caucasian women are, and women of other colors are very concerned about osteopenia, osteoporosis, and having healthy, strong bones. We know calcium is an element to that, but not the calcium found in cow's milk. So as we are all fooled by the advertisements making us believe that, most advertisements claim that cow's milk helps to strengthen bones. That's what we kind of grew up with learning. But the research tells a different story. In 2018, a meta-analysis involving over 250 male and female subjects found no link between drinking cow's milk and a reduced risk of bone fractures. In fact, according to a study published in the British Medical Journal, those getting the USDA recommended 3+ glasses per day had a whopping 60% greater rate of hip fracture.
Okay, so why is that? Now I've heard that it's because of the acidity of the milk actually counteracts the benefits of the calcium when it comes to bones. Is that correct?
So they don't actually know. I've talked to multiple scientists about this, and the two molecules that they think are mostly the culprit are the sugar molecules in dairy, D-galactose and NEU5GC.
They think that that's what's contributing to the bone loss?
To the breakdown of our bones. The calcium is building it up, but we also get calcium in sesame seeds and almonds and dark leafy greens and all sorts of wonderful plant foods without the sugar molecules that are breaking down our bone structures.
Fun personal fact is that when I was a vegetarian and I did do whey, in my protein powder, I had this would drink this casein protein powder, and I loved it because it got all fluffy and made it seem like it was it filled me up a lot, but it made me feel so bad afterwards. And I actually talked to my sister, and she had the same effect. And when I talked to my nutritionist back then, this is 20 years ago, she said, casein, you should avoid casein.
Define bad. Would you get stomach cramping, bloating? No,
I felt sick. Kind of slightly sick, like this. Yeah, it wasn't cramping or bloating. It didn't have anything to do with my intestines. It had to do with my whole body.
Inflammatory.
But I ignored it because I liked the taste of it, and I thought I was doing a good job of getting protein in. But then my nutritionist told me to get off it because it was actually more linked to cancer and things like that. Very not good things. So there are many, many reasons to avoid animal products and dairy
since
from
we
animals.
Are going to focus on cheese is the most concentrated form. It's 70% fat, cow's milk cheese, 70% fat, and has more salt per than a bag of potato chips.
Amazing.
Sodium.
People just don't know that. And they think they just, let's go into our guest, and then we can talk more about how addictive cheese is. And
okay. Well, I feel like our next guest here really needs no introduction, as David Letterman would say. And maybe some of you have guessed, but we are really excited to welcome the vegan cheese queen herself, Miyoko Schinner, to the podcast. She's an industry pioneer, truly, and an incredibly successful businesswoman. But her work is doing far more than enhancing our vegan cheese plates. But we are so glad she is doing that.
That's right.
She co-founded a farm animal sanctuary and recently launched into a project to aid the transition of dairy farms to more sustainable businesses. Her resume includes cookbooks and restaurants, the corporate world, and even a prior attempt at vegan food manufacturing, which we'll probably get into. But we're really all, I know, glad that she landed on cheese, because it's honestly the gateway cheese I give to every single dairy guzzler on the planet to lure them in. We have so much to talk about. So welcome, Miyoko.
Hi, Dotsie and Alexandra. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes.
So glad to be here.
We are excited. We wanted to have you on for a long time. And I have a quick little Miyoko story. Everyone knows you as being an incredibly strong and powerful businesswoman. But I don't think maybe not everyone knows how strong you are in all aspects. I got to spend some time with Miyoko and her team last year at the Campo Velo bicycling event. Miyoko and I even got to cook on stage together. We had a blast. But the bicycling part of it was they had, like 50-mile ride, 80-mile ride, 100-mile ride. And so I go with my husband, and we ended up, renting bikes because we didn't want to fly with them. And so we get the bikes and we do the ride. And I am literally kvetching and complaining from mile one. Because Princess and the Pea here, like my saddle was just not quite right. And then like the fore and aft was off. And then the people I was riding with, I didn't like. And it was a little cold and it kind of started to rain. And I just complained the whole time.
And where were the cheering crowds going, USA, USA?
Exactly. That's the problem. There were no fans. Right. Sure. So I pull in and my husband was like, you're grumpy. I'm going to spend some time away from you now. And anyway, I look over and Miyoko has come back from, I think you did 45 miles. Is that right?
No, I think it was more like 30, but like 35. I can't remember. Somewhere around there. Mm-hmm.
In regular shorts and tennis shoes, Vans, slip-on Vans, so flat, like not clipped into the pedal, on a bike she's obviously never ridden before, happy as a camper, tweeting like a bird. Just, that was amazing. That felt so good. She's like 35 miles with flat shoes on. So there you have it.
Wow, what a trooper.
Yeah, and just tough cookie and just such an incredible positive attitude. So I turned my attitude around really fast after that. And then my husband started talking to me too later that day.
Wow, thank you, Miyoko.
Well, Dotsie, you're the inspiration. So, all of us.
Not that day.
All strive to be more like you. So
Miyoko, we were talking about cheese earlier, and you created a line of vegan cheeses, but you grew up eating dairy cheese and you loved it. So why didn't you go there and just make regular cheese instead of
make the cheese you loved?
Yeah, creating this amazing line of foods that has now really changed the vegan world.
Well, I don't know. How could I? I was vegan. So if I'm vegan, I can't make dairy cheese. It was definitely something that was hard for me to give up when I transitioned to veganism about 35 years ago. It was the hardest thing for me to give up. Everything else was kind of easy, but giving up cheese, oh my gosh, going to a party and having to ignore the beautiful European style cheeses or a pizza parlor and not being able to eat pizza was really, really hard. So that is why I started the cheese company. I felt like we needed to tackle, there's a serious cheese crisis in this country. If you think about it, the average American eats over 40 pounds of cheese a year. Compare that to the turn of the 20th century when the average American ate about 4 pounds of cheese a year. So, I mean, it's really, really frightening the amount of cheese we're eating today versus, over 100 years ago. And what that's happening, how that's impacting our bodies and our planet.
So you decided to go into the vegan cheese business because of the health of Americans, because you saw a need of people who didn't want to eat cruelty but couldn't find and were addicted to their dairy cheese. What was the motivation?
Yeah, I think for me, my life has been always around producing beautiful food that's vegan to help convert people from a conventional diet to a more sustainable, compassionate lifestyle. And I've done that for the last 35 years. Cheese is, I think, is the holy grail. It's the last hurdle. It's the thing that everyone says, I would go vegan, but for the cheese, I just can't give up cheese. And the other thing that's really frightening about cheese is that most people think it's rather benign. I was sitting in on a focus group one time, and people were talking about how guilty they felt when they ate meat because, you're actually killing the animal. But cheese is better because they come from happy cows. And no cows are harmed in the process of making cheese. And I think what the majority of people don't realize is that the cheese industry is exactly the same as the meat industry. If you think about it from the very, very beginning, what happens to all the male calves? Male calves will never produce milk, and so they're slaughtered either at birth or they're raised into the veal industry. The veal industry exists because they were sort of like the extras, the unwanted extras of the byproduct of the dairy industry. And then what happens to the female cows after they've given milk for 4 to 6 years and their milk production declines is that they also get turned into hamburger. So basically, milk is basically a gateway into the meat industry. It's the same thing. Milk, all dairy cows end up as meat cows in the end. So it's a complete myth that we all believe. There's a lot of myths about milk that we believe. We think that cows are these magical creatures that just give milk year round without having to ever be impregnated. There's so much that we assume about milk that's simply wrong. And when you really do a deep dive into it and realize the detrimental effects of the entire animal dairy processing on not only our bodies, but the environment and everything else, down to the school lunch program, it's really, really shocking. It's probably the worst industry that exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had Howard on that one. Yeah, we had Howard Lyman on, the cattle rancher, and
yes.
He said he felt dairy was far more cruel than the cattle ranching because, as you said, they get killed at the end like the beef cattle, but they also endure 5 years of hell. And
That's
then,
right.
of course,
Right. And beef
so
cattle
many
are
of-
dead at 9 months.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so many of the doctors have also said,
Yeah.
if you're going to give up something, first give up the dairy.
Right.
Mhm.
From a health perspective, from a breathing perspective, from a bone perspective. I mean,
Mhm.
we've had so many
From
doctors.
everything, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
I mean,
remember?
my own journey.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say my own journey in transitioning to veganism was because I had all those health issues. That was certainly one of them.
So talk to us about that. You first became vegetarian when you were about 12. What was the inspiration for that?
Well, I think in a young mind, at some point, there is an opportunity to make a connection between the pork chop and a pig. And lucky for me, I was able to make that connection because of some friends and going on a camping trip with them when I was 12 years old. And I never looked back. I mean, literally overnight, I stopped eating meat and I never thought about it again.
Did they tell you? Did you not know that a pork chop was a pig, or what was it that they actually
I
said?
probably did, but I just didn't. Somehow, I didn't understand it viscerally. It was so long ago. It was 50 years ago, so I don't remember all that well. But I just remember coming home and looking at those pork chops and pushing the plate away and saying, I can't eat this anymore. And meat ceased to look like food to me. After that day, I never looked back.
And then you became vegan, though, at some point. Was that also
Yes.
because of an ethical reason?
Yeah. So in my mid-20s, this is before I knew how to pronounce the word vegan. But in my mid-20s, in the mid-80s or so, I think I read an article I think it was Vegetarian Times. It was so long ago, it was pre-internet. There wasn't a lot of information out there, but there was some article out there somewhere about dairy and its environmental impacts. And I think I was appalled by, getting a glimpse into that. I just decided, you know what, why just be a half-assed vegetarian? Why not go all the way? But it was a slow transition for me. I mean, I cut out, 99% of the dairy, but once in a while I'd cheat. And that took a few years before I stopped cheating.
And
Did you
what was your
cheat
cheat
with
food?
cheese?
Oh God, it was pizza
Okay.
and I think brie.
Yes.
So-
Yes.
Yeah.
No doubt on that. So well, do you remember a story or when you very first started just in your own kitchen, and you've always been a phenomenal chef. You've always loved food and making delicious, beautiful food, like you said, especially obviously vegan food. That very first time that you made a homemade cheese and someone tried it who was not dairy-free.
Yes.
Tell us that story.
I do remember that. So once, I hate to blame my husband in public, but I can blame him and credit him at the same time because he's the reason I really delved into the topic of cheese. So we had a vegan household, and one day he just said, "I'm sick and tired of not having cheese," and he started buying cheese, dairy cheese.
Oh, wow.
This is I don't know, maybe 10, like a dozen years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. And he's a lawyer, and I used to entertain a lot for his lawyer friends and things and his clients. And so we'd have these big parties, and I would make these beautiful vegan appetizers and little canopies and things. And he just said, "I'm buying cheese that my guests expect to have fine European cheeses or whatever." And so he'd go out and buy all this fancy cheese and put this cheese board together. And I just when the first year he did that, I was just appalled. So the second year, I was determined to start working on cheese. And I started playing around with making some very simple cheeses. What I was doing was there's a way of making cheese from yogurt. And I learned that making dairy yogurt when I was a vegetarian. So you make a really thick yogurt, and then you strain it through cheesecloth. You let it drip for about 24 hours into a kitchen sink. You have it tied up in cheesecloth like that. And then it becomes really, really firm. And then you can flavor it with herbs and things like that to make a cheese. So I did that. That was my first cheese. And I did something with lemon zest or something. And I put it out there amidst all these other artisan cheeses that he had picked up from local creameries. And
But this was obviously vegan yogurt. I mean,
This was vegan yogurt that I had made. It was homemade vegan yogurt,
From
which I had been
almonds?
making. No,
Or-
from soy and cashews. And I've been making that for a while. So I did that and I put it out there. And at the end of the evening, one of his clients or lawyers came up to me and said, man, what an amazing cheese board you guys served. I love the one with the lemon zest. Which creamery was that from? And I was like, yes. And so that just
and
really
Miyoko's Creamery was born.
Yeah. And so I was just determined to, just experiment. And my kitchen turned into this virtual laboratory. And I had all these projects, all these cheeses and different stages of fermentation. I took some traditional cheese making classes at the local community college. And I was the only student who didn't taste anything. I just wanted to know how it was done. So they were like, I can't believe there's a vegan in here. But it was funny. I mean, I wouldn't, they were like, are you sure you don't want to taste this? I'm like, absolutely sure, dude. I have no interest. I just wanted to know how, the enzymes and the bacteria worked on milk. And then I tried to apply that science to things like cashew milk and almond milk, and learned where the same science and technology could be applied and where it didn't work, and where I had to come up with a new method to do things. So it's just like deep dive into the exploration of dairy science and non-dairy science, which I was sort of helping to trailblaze. And I did that for about a couple of years, and that culminated in my book, Artisan Vegan Cheese, which came out in 2012.
Will you tell some of those processes? Because I get asked all the time, oh, wait, you can ferment vegan cheese, you can age vegan cheese. And
yes.
all I say is yes. And I don't know anything else past that. So help us out for when people ask those questions.
As it turns out, you can pretty much ferment anything. Or age anything. So there are so many different plant substrates that we just haven't even explored yet, because no one ever thought of doing that before. So this is a whole new world. I just got back from New York, just to share a story. And there's this amazing cheese shop that opened up about 4 years ago called Riverdale. And they had the most beautiful display of gorgeous, gorgeous cheeses. So there are so many.
And when you say cheese, are we assuming it's all vegan cheese?
That's all I ever talk about.
Okay,
so
okay. Just like our audience. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I refuse to use the word cheese alternative or because
Good.
it's not an alternative. It's going to become mainstream.
So you'll say dairy cheese if you're talking about dairy cheese.
If I'm talking about the alternative, I'll say dairy cheese.
Love it. All right,
yeah.
we're on board.
Okay. So anyway, there's all these little artisan cheese makers all over the world now. And I visited them in Rome and the UK and Budapest. And in New York, there's these little clusters of these little cheesemakers that are making these gorgeous, gorgeous artisan cheeses. They've just taken it to a whole new level. And I brought back a whole bunch of them. We tasted it here with our R&D team. We were so impressed at the level of just the quality that, it's just come so far since I first wrote my cookbook and since we launched 5 years ago. So, but basically to make dairy cheese, what you do is you introduce a lactic acid culture, bacteria, into milk, which has protein in it. And you also introduce an enzyme that works on the protein. So the enzyme works to congeal the protein, and that's where you get curds and whey, as they say. Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet eating her curds and whey. The lactic acid bacteria work to lower the pH and acidify the milk. So it starts out being very sweet, like milk is, because it's high in sugar. The lactic acid bacteria eat the sugar and lower the pH so that it turns into something that's like cheese. The curds are separated from the whey, and then they're pressed. And then, any number of things can happen to it. They can age it, they could brine it, they could inoculate it with a mold like Penicillium roqueforti or Penicillium candidum. All kinds of things can happen. So you can apply the same processes to certain plant substrates. They all act differently. For example, cashews are a very neutral nut. They're not high enough in protein. They're much higher in starch, so they don't coagulate like milk does, but you can thicken it through other means, such as pressing or air drying or aging, etc. Almonds are higher in protein, so are macadamia nuts and sunflower seeds. They might actually coagulate depending on the enzyme that you use. So there are similarities and then there are differences, and every single substrate is different. So you have to figure out, how do you tweak that? And what we've done here that I'm very proud of at Miyoko's is that we've commercialized this technology. It was one thing if you're making it in your little laboratory or your kitchen at home, or even in a small production facility, but to be able to go from making 40 pounds a day to making 20,000 pounds a day is a huge undertaking, and it requires capital expenditures, huge pieces of equipment, figuring out how do you construct these lines, how do you maintain the integrity of the product. When we first moved to built this 30,000 square foot facility and started producing, all of our cheeses were coming out like soup. They just never set up. And we didn't know what was going on. And, it took a team of food scientists and engineers and me to figure out what the issue was with the equipment that was causing a failure in the product. And so as the cheese revolution takes place, and we go from dairy products to plant-based substrates, there's going to be new books that are going to have to be written on the food science of fermenting plants, aging plants, and all of that. So we're in this is a brave new world that we are entering, that I feel very proud that Miyoko's is spearheading, that we're at the head there and blazing this new trail. And then there are all these amazing individual cheesemakers that are also out there discovering the science. And the trick is going to be scaling that science and making it commercial. So I hope I answered your question.
That was fantastic. Yeah.
That was really.
How long after you introduce the bacteria I'm sure all the cheeses are different.
Dotsie,
What's the longest?
Dotsie wants to make her own cheese.
Oh,
come on, Dotsie.
I need to come up there and do this with you so I can watch the process.
You should come out to have a tour. But anyway, fermentation typically, whether it's dairy milk or plant-based milks, is somewhere between 12 and 24 hours.
Oh, okay. All right.
So the fermentation period is not that long. It's time and temperature. Depends on the type of bacteria. Different bacteria thrive at different temperatures. So there could be a bacteria that thrives at 55 degrees. Some will thrive at 110 degrees. And different bacteria produce different flavor profiles. So some will produce a buttery note. Some will produce more of a sharp, pungent note. So different bacteria can be utilized to different result. And then after that, there's other processes that take place. And then the aging of cheese, if you age your cheese, some are fresh, some are aged, can be anywhere from, a week to 6 weeks or longer. So it all depends on the size, the shape, etc. But we, our aging room was built by a French aging room company. So it's built just like a traditional dairy cheese aging room.
And so I know all of your cheeses, and a lot of our listeners might. Which one is aged the longest?
We have, so not all of them age. The ones that are aged are like our aged English smoked farmhouse, aged English sharp farmhouse, herbs de Provence, black ash. We're also working on an amazing Parmesan that'll be aged for several months. So I'm really excited about that.
What about your favorite dairy cheese, the Brie? How is that?
Oh, yeah. So I made Brie the very first few months that we were in business back in 2014, in the fourth quarter of 2014 when we started. And, so the problem with Brie, and we hope to do it again someday, is that the mold it permeates the air and it gets on everything else. So everything ended up being Brie, even things that weren't supposed to be Brie, because we didn't have separate quarters to age it or to ripen it. So it's one of those things we hope to reintroduce next year.
With a different, you have to separate it into a different aging room?
Yeah, we'd have to separate it. Yeah, we have to have a different area of the facility. So we're working on that. We're working on a great Roquefort too, like a blue cheese. Yeah.
But what's coming out in April is a very meltable grilled cheese style cheese. And that's what you guys took to New York City last week. And you you gave away, because you did it on social media and there was a line of 300 people when you guys showed up, almost 400 grilled cheese sandwiches in like an hour, right?
That's exactly right. We had we did a 400 grilled cheese sandwich giveaway at a place called the Melt Shop, which is a chain of grilled cheese sandwich restaurants on the East Coast. And we're launching what we call our everyday product line. So we have a pepper jack and a cheddar, and we have those in slices, shreds, and then blocks, or called chunks. and it's launching in February. They're launching in February at Whole Foods and some other stores nationwide. And we wanted to show how they performed in a grilled cheese sandwich. So we're going to be doing a series of pop-ups throughout the country, and we've got a Grilled Cheese Nation food truck that's going to be going on tour starting March, starting in LA at Expo West.
Right.
So we're really excited about that. It'll be visiting your city, so be sure to find out where you can come and try it.
And how would
but
people
anyway, so
find
we
out?
gave away. It was just amazing. I mean, people were just blown away. I mean, there's a lot of slices and shreds on the market, but ours is still cultured. And the exciting thing is that what we're doing is right now, all of our cheeses have been made out of cashews. These cheeses are made out of legumes and oats. Yeah. So we're taking whole foods and we're fermenting. We're making a base out of those, a milk, and then we're fermenting that, and then turning it into cheese. So they actually have protein and calcium, about 10% of your daily need for calcium. So it's a good source of that. It also has protein. So we're super stoked, lower in saturated fat, lower in calories, and it melts incredibly, both of them. So anyway, I'm just so excited. I can't wait to get him. I can't. Yeah, have you had the grilled cheese yet? Did you get a chance to try it?
No, I've just been listening to your marketing director, Neil, tell me all about it for like the last 3 weeks, and I have not had a single bite.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So are you going to be at Expo West next month?
Yes, Expo West is my city. Like that's where I live. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So you're going to be having it next month.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I think
So
I can
Miyoko,
wait.
where can our audience track the truck?
Go to our website, miyokos.com, miyokos.com. We haven't announced the food truck tour yet. We'll be launching it very, very shortly. It starts March 2nd or March 3rd in LA.
Excellent. Excellent. Talking about all these amazing cheeses. And I have a cream cheese story. At Christmas, my goddaughter spent Christmas with us and 3 of her friends. So these are all women in their 20s and basically 20s and 30. And we, since I was doing the shopping, when we had brunch, they had to have Miyoko's cream cheese. They couldn't have the other kind, the dairy kind. And they loved it. And they're all women of color. So they all had some form of lactose intolerance,
but
they'd never had the vegan cream cheese, and they still dabble in dairy because they haven't been exposed enough to Miyoko's. Anyway, it was just a huge hit. I mean, they loved it, not in terms of compared to the dairy kind, but just because it tasted so good on its own. So
yes.
It really was great.
No, that's so important. I mean, that is our goal at Miyoko's. With every product we make, we want not only the flavor, but the true functionality of the dairy counterpart. So our cream cheese makes killer New York style cheesecake, for example.
Oh, that's good to know.
You can make, a buttercream frosting.
Can you make me one?
Because there's only like 4 ingredients. There's cashews, coconut cream, not coconut oil, cultures, and salt. That's all it is. Very, very clean label. And all of our goal is to produce we want to make cheese and butter out of plants, out of whole plant ingredients, minimize the processing agents, et cetera. We want to deliver clean label, clean ingredients, whole foods, plant-based products, just applying this age-old technology of cheese making with some modern food science, and just change the format of plants into what looks like an animal dairy product.
Exactly. Speaking of butter,
yes.
In 2018, you were sued for sort of stealing dairy's halo because you label your butter as butter, right? So you're an activist through and through. But this suit, they said obviously you were misleading customers. What was the outcome? And what has happened since then? And has there been any pressure in terms of how you label your cheese?
Yes, it's so interesting. So first of all, that had a very great outcome. The suit was dismissed. There was a very amicable end to that suit.
Okay.
That suited all of us, both parties. So that was a very interesting, unexpected outcome. But the suit was that was a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit. But it goes on. Then there was the state of Wisconsin that started pulling butter off the shelves of stores, saying that they couldn't sell butter anymore because it was misleading consumers. And it turned out that there were 2 complaints when we filed for, okay, so who are these people complaining? And there were 2. One was the dairy industry and the other was Milkweed magazine. So that story got picked up by Milkweed. It's a magazine for the industry, the dairy industry. Yeah. So when that story got out on Bloomberg, they got Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin, was hit with so many consumer complaints about not being able to find our butter. And they just said, okay, they threw up their arms and said, okay, fine, you can sell your butter. That's fine. We're just backing off. Now there's actually 2 bills in Congress, 2 bills at state legislative level in Wisconsin about restricting language. The same thing is happening in California. We got a letter from the state of California saying that we couldn't use the term butter. Not only were we told we couldn't use the term butter, that we couldn't have anything alluding to the dairy industry on our website or marketing materials, including a picture of a woman hugging a cow on our website. Because we were trying to show that cows are for hugging, not for eating, not for milking, not for eating. So that's very, very interesting. I really can't talk much more about California right now. But yes, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is a battle that has to be fought. I'm not going to lie down because we have to change the food industry. And so I'm not just a CEO of a company making products to sell. I'm here to change the food industry. I'm here to create a world that's based on not only sustainability, but compassion for all living beings. This is critical to me. I have rescued cows at my farmed animal sanctuary. And, I've known individual cows. Some of them are nice, some of them are not, just like people. But I love all animals, but not just whether I like an individual animal or not. They all have the right to live life according to their needs, to their desires, not to be at our beck and call to be commodities for us. So I'm fighting for the right of all living beings on this planet. And if we want to protect the rights of all living beings on this planet, we have to save the planet. And that's on fire too. We've got to reverse climate change. So this is a battle that has to be won. I'm determined to win this battle. I'm not going to give up.
No, you won't.
So you were among the mayo industry, did sue, right? Just mayo and the eggs. They're all threatened. Milk,
they're all
cow's
threatened.
milk are threatened by the almond milk industry.
That's right.
The argument was that, tell me if I'm wrong, was that that Miyoko's product shouldn't be called butter. It should be called margarine, which I think, frankly,
not margarine. They actually didn't say margarine.
Oh,
because
they didn't.
There's another standard of identity for margarine. So they wanted it to be called something like plant-based spread or coconut oil spread or something. Margarine is a different.
I see.
So
the margarine people are pissed at you too. For taking away their thunder.
They're not actually, because, for example, Upfields, which is the maker of Country Crock, I can't believe it's not butter, launched their own version of a vegan butter or a vegan spread that they call plant butter. They call that plant butter. And then if you think about what's going on in the dairy industry, there are companies now, I think it's Organic Valley has launched a milk, get this, that's called grass milk.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what the heck is grass milk? Did you take grass and milk that? No. And so, the dairy industry is saying basically it's from grass-fed cows.
Right. We should fight back and say it's not grass milk. You didn't milk the grass.
That's right. We didn't milk the grass. So this is what I'm saying is that they're complaining about us because they're threatened, but at the same time they're using their own terminology. And then there's company like Upfields. They see the writing on the wall. They're a dairy company also, but they're also making all these plant-based products as well. Mm-hmm. So there are many dairy companies as well as meat companies that are getting involved with the plant-based movement, that know, they see the writing on the wall, they know where it's going, and they're spending money on this, and that they're going in that direction. So it's really not them so much that are complaining. It's the farmers. It's the ranchers. It's the people that are tied to the land, that are in debt over their head to the large dairy processors or egg processors. And these are the people that have the most to lose. And these are the people that we at Miyoko's want to help, because they're basically indentured servants to the dairy industry themselves.
Talk to us about, they think they feel threatened by you, but actually you want to help them move into a more sustainable business. So
if we can,
tell us about that.
Yeah. So we just launched this initiative to help a dairy farmer convert to crops. I mean, what's been going on is that dairy's been in decline for many years. I'm sure you've spoken about it. And there are these big consolidators that are basically buying all these farmers. So in the old days, you had a local farmer, and the milk went to the milkman, and the milk was distributed only locally. Today, it's all consolidated by these large processors. And then they go into these contracts where they have to buy all this equipment. The average dairy farmer owes something like $500,000 to $1 million. Yeah. They're in debt for equipment, and they're earning $30,000 a year on average. So there is no chance that they're going to be able to pay that debt back. And they can't get out of the industry even if they want to. They're committing suicide at an all-time high. Dairy farms are filing bankruptcy at an all-time high. Not to mention that Borden just filed bankruptcy. Dean Foods, the Dean Foods and Borden are the two of the biggest, and they both filed bankruptcy. So the whole industry is under collapse. But the ones that are being hardest hit are these poor dairy farmers that have land, and they're going to lose their land. They're going to lose their livelihood. They don't know anything else. Some of them, that's all they've ever done their entire lives, and they're in debt over their heads to these large dairy processors. So they're targeting us, thinking that it's the plant-based industry that's causing them to fail, but it's not. It's really the consolidation of all of these, of dairy and animal ag. And so what we'd like to do is find a dairy farmer. So if you're a dairy farmer out there that is willing to transition to a new industry, that wants to stay true to their land and stay on the land, we want to help you, provide you the livelihood, help you make that transition to growing crops that can become part of our supply chain. Maybe it'll be legumes or oats, or maybe some new variety of potato, something like that, to become part of our R&D and supply chain. So we ensure that not only we help you transition, but you're going to have a livelihood because you're going to have a place to sell your products. Unfortunately, there's going to be a collapse of many, many farms around the country. At the same time, there's going to be 1.2 million new jobs created in this industry over the next 10 years. So let's help you become part of that new economy that is going to take over the old.
So if you are a medium-sized dairy farmer in central to northern Cal and you're interested in this, email us and we'll put you in touch with Miyoko. And
yes, please do. Yeah, we'd love to talk to you, really.
Are there any other, you are one woman working to convert 1 or 2 or 3 farms. Are there any kind of initiatives on a federal scale or a state scale? Do they see the writing on the wall, and are they trying? No, you're shaking your head no.
No, there's not. I mean, I know that there's an opportunity with someone like Senator Cory Booker to get something to redirect some subsidies that are used for sustainability to help fund initiatives like this. There's a California State Assemblyman, Ash Kalra, that is trying to do something there to take some of the money that's allocated for sustainability and redirect it to something like this. So there are some legislators that are trying to make progress, but I do feel that industry needs to take a lead role in this as well, too.
Right.
Because it's affecting all of us. So what we're creating is going to be an open source model for others to follow as well. We're hoping that other, companies that have the resources follow suit and try to help in their own way. Maybe it's a chicken farmer as well. I know there's some transitions going on in the chicken industry, which is all the egg industry, which is suffering the same fate. The egg and chicken industry. They're also like indentured servants, and some of them are switching to growing mushrooms, et cetera. So there's a lot of opportunity for people who own land, farmers, to transition to other things. There's also transitions that are being made towards almonds or hemp. As well as pea protein, peas.
Yeah. Pulse crops are the most versatile of all of them, right? In terms of like what you can use them in, from burgers to protein powder to just by themselves to
cheesecake.
And to cheesecake, yes.
I love cheesecake when I was. You love cheese. I like cheesecake. As Dotsie knows, I love sweet things, and I don't really the non-sweet stuff.
Oh my God, my New York style cheesecake is amazing. It's so good. Now there's no deprivation at all.
Well, you don't. Do you sell that? You don't sell.
No.
I would have known about it if you sold it. But now you can
on our website. You can make it yourself. It's so good.
There you go. All right. I'm sure it's not going to taste like when Miyoko makes it, but I'll try.
Let's actually go from the macro to the personal. There are a lot of people who they want to become vegan, and you are an author of many cookbooks. You had your own vegan bakery, a vegan restaurant. Before Miyoko's Cheese, you actually manufactured other vegan foods. How do you, if someone comes up to you and says, I want to be vegan, but what do I do? What do I do first? What is your advice?
Oh, gee. I mean, it really depends on the person, but there's so much education out there. I mean, there's great podcasts like what you're doing, Switch4Good. There's so many great websites that not only cover recipes, but, people become vegan for different reasons. It could be for health. If it's for health, then you want to direct them to more of a whole foods, plant-based website, like beyond, like PCRM or Dr. McDougall. I mean, there's programs like that. But, maybe they're going vegan because they made a connection with animals and they just want to celebrate vegan junk food. And that's also a perfectly good entree. I'm working on my 6th book right now. With 10 Speed Random House. They asked me to write a book on, which is pretty funny. It's on vegan meat, how to use all the vegan meats that are available today, as well as how to make your own. I just think it's funny because I'm the last, I just came up with a recipe for brisket because have you guys watched that show, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel? And she's always taking brisket to help her husband get a gig. As a comedian.
Yeah,
anyway,
brisket was the thing in the 50s, 60s, 50s
70s. Or something. And I have no idea what brisket is. I've never had it. But I was like, I watched Mrs. Maisel and I thought, I got to come up with a vegan brisket. So
I'll come taste it. Up on it.
This brings up an interesting point. How do you come up with a brisket when you've never did you ever taste brisket when you were a kid?
People describing it. So first of all, I don't care if it tastes exactly like it. I want it to have the same sort of satisfaction. So, I don't think as a vegan of 35 years, I don't want to taste like some of the new meat substitutes taste too real for me. They I'm so glad Impossible exists. It's just not my thing. I just don't want to eat Impossible. But I do like eating seitan, for example. That doesn't taste like meat, but it's meaty. And I've also served like really great seitan that I've made to meat eaters, and they don't realize they're eating seitan. So because I think there's such a wide range of the meatiness in meats, as it turns out. Like some chicken can be really bland. And so I can make a vegan chicken that actually tastes better or has more flavor. So if that makes sense, So anyway, the brisket thing was, I listened to people's description of what brisket was. I made it out of mushrooms and pea protein and wheat gluten. And it kind of does it. People who were meat eaters said that looks just like brisket, and then it kind of falls apart like brisket does.
Wow.
And they were like, this is delicious. Like it may not taste exactly like brisket, but they were like, I would eat this. I would make it again. It's delicious. So I think that's what I think people are looking for. Same thing with cheese. Like we're looking for the same satisfaction that thing provides, which is like fat and salt and, all the things that ultimately, if you want to live to 105, you probably don't want all that stuff. But it's such a great food for transitioning or for indulging once in a while. I'm not a purist by any means. I like to eat more of what they call a whole foods plant-based diet, generally speaking. But you know what? I think there's always a time for indulgence. There's always a time to celebrate with people. We can't be critical of people who, we can't, I don't know. I get a little turned off when vegans go, but it's got oil in it or it's got salt or whatever. Let's help people transition. The most important thing is that we're all compassionate, and we preach compassion, which goes not only towards animals but to people. Let's help everybody transition to a more sustainable diet.
Right. If you're not recovering or repairing from heart disease or arteriosclerosis, like you can live a little.
Yeah.
Have a little cheese, have a little brisket, have
once
a
in a
little
while.
cheesecake.
But if you're recovering, that's like, food becomes your medicine then. So you do have to take what you eat more seriously. But if you're not recovering, we still need to get you over to the vegan side. So let's help you with deliciousness. Like there's nothing wrong with tasty.
Well, I think you're amazing. You're talking about compassion, and you mentioned your animal sanctuary. That's a huge responsibility. I don't know if it's more of a responsibility than owning a company that has to churn out
and you opened
20,000 pounds of cheese a day. But tell us about it, and what inspired you to take on yet another just important, huge venture?
Well, I didn't exactly decide. It was sort of accidentally on purpose. We had land, and then these goats arrived. Somebody asked us to take goats, and then these pigs arrived, and then another goat and a sheep. And then it was like, my husband, who's a lawyer, goes, we should just start a 501c3, because, the fact of the matter is, you have to have a succession plan for these animals. If something happens to us, it's not so easy to rehome a cow. It's just, it's not like, I'll take your cow or your 500-pound pig. It just doesn't work that way. So we put together a 501c3. And today, our sanctuary, Rancho Compasión, is staffed by, we have 2 full-time staff people. We have lots and lots of volunteers that come on a daily basis. We have visitation, work days, school field trips, humane education. We're not just about rescuing farm animals and taking them out of the food system, but we're about helping people make that connection between these amazing lives and personalities these animals have, so that you can make the connection between the food on your plate and the life that it came from. I want you to think about not, what are we eating today, but who are we eating today? And when you start thinking about, I could have been eating Goober, the pig that, flops over when you rub his belly, and just with the biggest smile on his face. We want you to start thinking of making those connections by actually connecting with individual animals. They're the best ambassadors possible for veganism. So when you spend time with these amazing creatures, it's hard to go home. We have so many people who visit who aren't vegan, and they go, oh my God, I'm going to go home and think about, they come back and they go, I haven't eaten meat since I came to your farm. Yeah. So it's really, really powerful thing. We let the animals speak for themselves. They want to connect with us. It's just so amazing, the connection they make with us. They're not off on their own. Like when people are there, they're all like right there with the people, wanting to relate, share their lives with us. They're just amazing. I can tell you animal stories all day long.
It's real life meat, which is nothing more powerful. Do you have a favorite cow story that you can share with us, since we've been focusing on?
So unfortunately, Erica is no longer with us, but I'd like to share a story about Erica. She was one of the greatest ambassadors of all time. Erica was a dairy cow that was going to be put down because she was arthritic and couldn't stand. Obviously, if you can't stand, you can't give milk. So she was rescued somehow, and she came to us. And when I agreed to take her, I thought, what am I thinking? I don't know how to take care of an arthritic dairy cow. I have limited experience with animals, with farm animals. So she arrived, and she came out of the trailer. And I think there's when animals get there, they immediately know this is not a traditional farm where they're going to be, the trailer is going to come and haul them away at some point. They know that this is a different place, that this is their forever home. There's something in the energy of Rancho Compasión. So when she saw the green acres, she ran off that trailer, and she never stopped running for 2 years until she passed away, unfortunately. And she became, at first she was afraid of people, and then next thing you knew, she would just sneak up upon you for a hug or a kiss. And she became the most loving creature. And she knew exactly what she needed to communicate to people when they came. So she became a great ambassador. So she had arthritis, but she discovered the most this joie de vivre, this reason the joy of living. And she spent the last 2 years of her life exploring far and wide as far as her legs could carry her. She rarely sat down. She's like, I'm going to enjoy every last minute that I have before. Anyway, her legs gave in one day and she broke her leg and she died, unfortunately. It was very sad in the end. We all missed her, but she was, we have this great picture of her literally running down a steep hill to come and greet us. And we put it up on social media saying something like, all living beings have a right to happiness or something. And that's really, it's not just all humans, but all living beings have the right to live, to be joyous.
Yeah.
So,
Miyoko, what motivates you each morning when you wake up?
Oh, changing the world. I mean, I feel so grateful that I've been given this opportunity to do this, to be at the helm of this revolution, along with so many other leaders in the industry, in activism, Olympians that are changing the world. I mean, we're changing the food system. This is the first time we've had the opportunity to do that in 12,000 years since the advent of agriculture. This is going to be this is the beginning of a new food system. We are creating that. And I'm just stoked every single day. I can't believe I was given this life. So, I don't know. The challenges don't faze me. Bring them on. There are good days, bad days. There are hard days, easy days, but every single day is worth living. And the animals remind me of that too. I just feel so blessed all around.
Well, we feel blessed having you on this show, sharing your just amazing expertise with us and your passion. So thank you. And how can people learn more about your Rancho Compasión? Is there a website?
Yeah, ranchocompasion.org. So it's spelled Rancho, Rancho, Compasión, which is just like compassion, but only one S.
Okay.
So ranchocompasion.org. You can go there, find out about it. We're a 501c3. We live off of donations. So, we'd love to get that as well. But come and visit us. We have regular visitation day. It's an amazing place.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Cheers to Erica. I'm the only one
Yeah,
with
thank
the
you.
water in
Thank
my
you.
hand, but
Yeah.
it's a beautiful story. I'm glad you told it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switch4good.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.